And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hello, I'm National Weather Service meteorologist Peter Chan, and this is your Alaska aviation weather outlook on this Wednesday, August 6th, 2025. And to set things up, we have an area of low pressure crossing the lower Alaska Peninsula. There's another low with a healthier push of moisture heading northeastward. That's going to impact the Gulf and especially northeastern Gulf Panhandle for the weekend. But the first system has a front that's working its way gradually north and eastward. And this front has some strong gusty winds along and ahead of it, gale force winds, and some heavier rainfall. Areas of the Alaska Peninsula and eastern Kodiak Island could see anywhere from 1.5 to as much as 3 to locally 4 inches of rain. This is a wet system. And that will continue spreading north and eastward into Thursday. And that will eventually get the eastern Kenai, western Prince William Sound. So we expect the rain to overspread along here the north central Gulf Coast as we head into Thursday. IFR conditions are anticipated. Southern Panhandle along the outer coast, as well as pockets here, eastern Kenai, and then down here along Shelikof Strait, entrance to Cook Inlet. And as we look farther north, we have IFR conditions along the Beaufort Sea coast Thursday morning, some lower stratus and some fog. And then also here within the passes of the Brooks Range could be IFR, Anatuvik, Adigan passes, and then out over the Bering, covering much of the Aleutians. For Thursday afternoon, you can see that front over the Gulf, eastern Kenai, IFR conditions along and ahead of that front. And again, areas of rain continue to work their way along the Gulf Coast. Some showers trying to pull back to south central. We also have for Thursday red flag warnings for areas around Delta Junction. And we also have wind advisories for the upper Robertson River and Donnelly Dome areas, because this, again, as this front approaches, that's increasing the winds in the eastern Alaska range. But there also could be some scattered thunderstorms, middle Yukon Valley up into the lower Yukon Flats area. This frontal boundary remains stationary right across this area of the state, cooler temperatures to the north. And on Friday morning, we find areas of IFR along the Gulf Coast into areas of the Panhandle, especially the outer coast, northern Panhandle, Chilkoot, White. Also some IFR conditions are possible there up around Isabel, Windy Pass, and then down around Rainy, Merrill, Lake Clark passes for Friday morning. And also it looks like IFR conditions will pull mainly just off of the Arctic coast, with perhaps in vicinity, though still hanging around Dead Horse. And for Friday afternoon, still a fair amount of IFR conditions throughout the Panhandle, northeastern Gulf Coast, Yakutat to areas surrounding Prince William Sound, including Cordova. And then perhaps isolated to a few scattered storms here, east side of Norton Sound up there through the lower middle Yukon Valley, especially as you get further upriver. And as we look out over across the Bering, IFR conditions across central lower Bering and much of the Aleutian chain. Past conditions for Thursday in through the east central Brooks Range. IFR conditions there, Anatuvik Pass becoming MVFR. Same thing, Adigan early in the day, IFR to start, then lifting to MVFR. Lake Clark and Merrill should generally be stuck in IFR conditions on Thursday with that frontal boundary, plus some winds potentially. The better chance of turbulence will be further south and west, but still IFR conditions, ceilings, and due to the fact there may be some precipitation with that upslope east-southeasterly flow. Rainy Pass, MVFR becoming IFR. Windy Pass will maybe start VFR becoming MVFR. Isabel should hold on to far enough east to hold on to VFR conditions, as will Mentasta Pass in the eastern Alaska range, but there will be some breezier conditions around some of the ridge lines and passes there. Tanita Pass should generally be VFR through the pass, but on the south, if you south side of the pass, further south you go, MVFR conditions. Portage Pass, generally MVFR through the pass, but becoming IFR toward the east entrance and especially out over Prince William Sound. And then Chilkoot and White, look for MVFR conditions Thursday morning, lifting to VFR as we go through later morning and midday. Freezing levels show a few features very clearly. The low that's emerging into the North Pacific after crossing the lower Alaska Peninsula. Ahead of it, we have this front arcing, occluded front. So ahead of it, freezing levels aloft are much higher, 12 and 14,000 feet. So any icing in this region is going to be pretty high up above what most general aviation flies at smaller planes. And then to the north, we have the isotherms packed. So this indicates a frontal boundary and a stationary front running along the spine of the Brooks Range into northwest Canada. And where we have the precipitation producing clouds, freezing levels are pretty high up, so there could be some moderate icing out over areas of southwest, west arm of the Alaska Range, Kodiak Island, and then also down here south and southeast of the Alaska Peninsula. So again, above 14,000 feet, more likely to encounter some icing. And then up here in the northeast, part of the mainland near the Alcan border, Yukon Flats, above 12,000 feet. So the circulation, looking at upper level jet stream winds 30,000 feet, clearly the circulation around the low, upper low, strongest winds out ahead of it on the east and southeast quadrants of the low. And then we have where this front is draped, we find winds aloft, 100 knot wind max there, up through the lower Mackenzie River Valley. And then as we bring things down to 700 millibars or 9,000 feet, we have pretty broad low circulation with the low at mid-level centered here over the lower Alaska Peninsula with southerly flow coming on up into areas of the northern northeastern Gulf Coast. Strongest winds 40 to locally 50 knots south of Kodiak Island. Backside, we have northeast to north winds drawing down across the central Aleutians. And then at 3,000 feet, with the frontal boundary, there is a stronger winds coming into just outside of Hinchinbrook entrance, Kayak Island, locally 50-55 knots from the southeast. Another thing I would suggest, this would suggest with that frontal boundary, there could be some low-level wind shear in this region. And then a broad area of 35 to 40 knot winds south of Kodiak Island in the North Pacific. So in drawing this out, turbulence, the greatest threat, widespread moderate turbulence here, areas of the southwest, especially Lake Iliamna through Lower Cook Inlet, this area here, Kennedy entrance, eastern Kenai, and also the area outside of Hinchinbrook entrance to Kayak Island. There could even be isolated severe turbulence within this region, also maybe Lower Cook Inlet, surface to 5,000 feet, and the potential for some low-level wind shear right along that front. And then back to the southwest in the northeast north flow coming in across the central Aleutians, there could be some moderate turbulence, surface to 3,000 feet on Thursday.